Warming pumpkin spices in a sweet custard, swirling around bits of pillowy soft brioche and pumpkin bread. Punctured by a spiced vanilla whiskey sauce that hits you all the way down. I'm warning you now, make this at your own risk. I served this at Thanksgiving, and it was quite literally the most irresistible thing I've ever served, ever. It's just that good that you're not gonna wanna just make it at Thanksgiving. You're gonna wanna make it all the time. You can use any white, non-whole wheat, non-seeded bread. Things like challah, French bread, rolls, even croissants. But the trick to bread pudding is to prep ahead of time. Because you wanna make sure that your bread is super stale as you can get it. The more stale the bread is, the more it will soak up the liquid from the custard. For this recipe, since I want maximum pumpkin flavor, I'm mixing brioche with pumpkin bread. This is what you'll need to make the pumpkin bread. Half a cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of light brown sugar, 1.5 cups of pumpkin puree, 2.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, half a teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 of a teaspoon of allspice, 2 eggs, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon baking soda, half a cup of canola oil, and a dash of vanilla. Once you've measured all these ingredients, combine all the dry ingredients together, so the flour, the spices, salt, and baking soda. Then preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Have you ever actually tried just raw pumpkin like this, like pumpkin straight out of the can? It's disgusting. So now that everything is in its proper bowls and all measured out, I'm moving over to the mixing stand. We're gonna start this part by whisking together both of the sugars with both of the eggs. I tried to keep the sugar in the loaf a little bit on the lower side, not crazy low, but just a little bit on the lower side because the custard is also going to be sweetened. So I didn't want to blow our heads off, but we still want that sweetness. Okay, so you see how it's gotten lighter in color, like the sugars are not quite as dark as they used to be. That's when I know you can stop and add the oil and the pumpkin to it. And the oil. Just drop it in there. I never measure vanilla. I don't know why. This is what I do, literally. Ready? Dollop. Before any dry ingredients go in, just give the bowl a good scrape down the sides. As best as you can. You don't have to be completely thorough, but just get those edges where the mixer might have missed it. Then with the mixer on low speed, add the dry ingredients, little by little. Oh man, try to get it in the bowl. Taste testing is a very important and scientific part of baking. Very scientific. The batter comes out thick and fluffy, and it bakes up with a nice tight crumb, kind of like the Starbucks pumpkin loaf, which I love. It goes into your oven for about an hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes if your oven's a little bit on the low side, and in the meantime, I will be here doing this. The loaf has been baked and cooled just slightly, so before we go to bed, I'm cutting it into 1-inch cubes and leaving it out to dry on the counter overnight along with the brioche. So the pumpkin bread and the brioche has been sitting out overnight, and they're both pretty dry. Food historians say bread pudding goes as far back in Europe as the 11th century, invented as a way to make use of precious bread gone stale. Now we can make the custard, which is truly as easy as just throwing things in a bowl and mixing it and then pouring it over the bread. That's it. This is what you'll need for the custard. 10 cups of stale brioche and pumpkin bread, 3 cups of heavy cream, 1.5 cups of pumpkin puree, 6 tablespoons unsalted butter, melted, 1 cup light brown sugar, 4 eggs, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1.5 teaspoons of ginger, 1.5 teaspoons allspice, a generous pinch of salt. This makes enough for a 9 by 13 baking dish, so cut everything in half if you want to make less. Start by whisking the eggs and then whisking them into the cream. I don't know why I just did. Don't do what I just did. It's a lot easier to whisk the eggs first and then you whisk them into the cream. Don't put whole eggs into the cream like I did. I just got impatient. Then in a separate bowl, mix together the pumpkin, spices, salt, and sugar. Mix this all together with a big bowl of cream as well as the butter. And now we whisk that. It is a little bit untidy. And now we whisk all together. Get it nice and incorporated. This is where most of the flavor is going to come from. Don't do it vigorously, just gently, coax it. You could also just do this with like a stand mixer or even a hand mixer. My stand mixer is not clean right now, that's why I'm not using it. But you could easily do that, and this would be a much faster and probably cleaner process. I know I like to eat the batter because it's delicious, but also I really do taste test to see if I've missed an ingredient. Because one time I made a whole loaf of bread without putting any salt in it. It was disgusting. This is the fun part. Pour this fragrant pumpkin-y custard over the bread and toss with your hands. The spices release and it floats up to your nose, but it's only a hint of what's to come. Oh, I almost forgot. I was about to bake this off. We have to put the raisins in here. I like to put in raisins and sour cherries. Now, the raisins are very traditional for bread pudding. The sour cherries are my addition. If you don't like them, you can totally skip them. But I like putting the sour cherries in because they have that bite of tang. So when you're going through the bread pudding and it's super, super sweet and sugary and pumpkin-y, and then all of a sudden the sour cherry comes through and it's like sweet and sour. Oh, I think it's so good. Now this part you eyeball to your preference. I like to load this up with raisins and cherries because I really enjoy them. That's it. That's literally your bread pudding. Just mixing this all together. Now, pour it in the pan and it goes in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Spread it out evenly in the pan, but don't press down too hard. If anyone in your house didn't know you were baking pumpkin bread pudding, they will now. Oh, look at it. Oh, you know what I'm gonna say, right? Oh my God, it smells so good. This bread pudding is one of those things that actually tastes better the next day. So what I usually do is I make it the day before I know I want to serve it, and then it just kind of like blends and melds together even more than when it comes right out of the oven. Oh, but that's not all. There's something else that goes with this bread pudding. A whiskey sauce. A sweet whiskey sauce that just punches this up to a whole other level and also presents beautifully. Ooh, ooh. It's too strong for me by itself. For the whiskey sauce, in a small pan on medium-low, melt together 1 cup of butter, 4 tablespoons heavy cream, 2 cups brown sugar, 6 tablespoons of whiskey, and a pinch of salt. Let it all simmer together until the sugar and the butter have melted. It'll get frothy and rise pretty quickly, so turn off the heat as soon as you see this. I promise you this is not strong at all. I'm not a big drinker. I don't really like whiskey, to be honest, but this I like a lot. The whiskey sauce is ready. The bread pudding is ready. Now the question is, are you ready? Cue the sexy music, please. This is the dish that is so good, it's almost indecent. I'm just gonna stop talking. You feast with your eyes. Oh my God, it's even better than the first time I made it. If you make this recipe, I want to see your bakes. So go on Instagram and tag me there. I'm at The Travel Muse. I'm super active. I interact with everybody. Enjoy. I'll see you next time.